Avoid boring people and don't be boring to other people. Nobel Prize winner, Jim Watson. The art of being interesting is important, not just because we want to show up in our lives and attract incredible people into our lives, but also because life's too short to talk to people we don't really want to talk to, which is exactly why in this week's episode of MasterTalk, I am going to be showing you 3 key ideas and ways for you to stop being boring and to be a little bit more interesting. So let's get into it. Number 1, focus on communicating the parts of your arguments that are the most interesting. I'm sure most of us have been in conversations where,
yeah, and this is what happened at the story, and this is what happened in blah, blah, and we're just...
We've all been there. These are the conversations that we don't necessarily want to be a part of because the person just rambles on and on and on until the sun rises again the next day. So what's the point here? The point here is it's very easy for us to take the stories in our lives and make them more interesting for the people around us. Here's an easy trick in how you can implement this too in your life. Pick the 3 most fascinating stories that has happened to you, and then within those stories, ask yourself, what is the key takeaway first? What is the outcome that I want to share to the other person? And how can I get to that outcome in the fastest possible way? And then the next piece around that is figuring out the technique around communication. So now that you've prioritized the stories that matter, how do you communicate them in a way that gets people excited? Because there's a big difference between saying, this is what happened to me and this was the story and this is why it's interesting, versus this is the story and this is why it should be interesting to you. So also pay attention to the technique and how you communicate your ideas. And that's exactly how we can stop being a little less boring. Number 2, ask questions no one else is willing to ask and listen attentively. Look, I'm not saying that every time you go to a bar or an event that people will like you, but you'll definitely stand out. Whenever I enter conversations with people, I generally ask them questions like, what are you passionate about? What do you care about the most in this world and why? And what do you want your impact to be? But I also ask some odder questions like, if you were God, what would you do first and why? If you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would you have dinner with? And what would you ask them that you can't watch in a video or read in a book? And questions like, if you had $1 million, what would you do with your life? What would you do with your time? These are the questions that most people don't often ask each other, but that I'm weird enough to ask. And that's what makes me a bit different than most. And mind you, it doesn't necessarily make me more interesting, but to the people around me, to a small group of people who want to answer them, they perceive me as less interesting. So what does this mean for you? It means figure out the 3 questions you'd want to ask somebody else if you've known them for a long time, but you're too shy to ask. And I would encourage you to ask those questions a lot earlier in the friendship, in the conversation, in the relationship, so you can figure out if this is even somebody you want to talk to for a longer period of time. And that's the key to being less boring, is to be around people who are just as interesting as you are. And finally, number 3, have a unique belief system. I found out of all of the things that we talked about in this video, the number 1 trait that is common between every interesting person I know is a unique belief system and really anything that they care about in the world. I remember this one time I met a girl who was so obsessed with making pizzas that she once asked me to sniff the bread that we were eating together. And I didn't really understand what that meant. And then I met another person who was so obsessed with physics that they just kept talking about it for 15 minutes straight without a single breath. But these are the people that I personally find interesting. Why? Because they have a unique point of view on how the world should be. Whereas most conversations, when you talk to people, they generally say generalities like, my life's great and I work at this job and I do this thing. It's always the same vanilla conversation. But the truth is, all of us are unique. All of us have our own experiences that only happen to us, but we make the decision to not share them. Why? Because we want to fit in. We want to fit in this neat box like everyone else so that people don't judge us. But here's the secret to being less boring, everyone, is if you stay in the box, you won't actually fit in because you'll get lost in the sea of boxes that are next to you. So I encourage you to share your uniqueness, to ask those quirky questions, to get other people to sniff your pizza dough, and to really share what you care about to the world, because that's how you stand out to the people who actually want to have a friendship with you. And that is the secret to living a beautiful, fulfilled life. As Jim Watson said, avoid boring people and don't be boring to other people. Life is short, folks. I want you to share your uniqueness because it's those gifts, those quirky traits about your personality that actually make you less boring, that make you interesting to the people around you. So I encourage you to share that so that people fall in love with you and who you actually are. As always, if you enjoyed this week's episode of Master Talk, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel to see more videos like this. And if you know someone that loves to sniff bread, hey, it's a true story, man. If you enjoyed this video and you know someone who sniffs bread, send them this video and have a great day. Take care, everyone.